What is up, y'all? I am so excited that you're here with me. Welcome to episode 1 of Get Out Yourself podcast with Shay. Just to share a little bit about myself, my name is Shay. I'm 32. I'm originally from South Central LA. I'm married to my college sweetheart. I'm a new mom. I'm 3 months postpartum. So we're going to get into all of the things. Like I said, I'm super excited to start my podcast. It's something I've been wanting to do for the longest time, but I've been really holding myself back because I've been being a perfectionist. I feel like I need to know everything about everything before even getting started. And I'm not really giving myself grace to learn along the way and to grow along the way. I feel like I have to start at step 10. And I don't know if it's because I really love podcasts, like I've been listening to them for so many years and that I've grown with different podcasts and I've seen how they improved. And I don't know, I guess I feel like I should have learned something from that. So I should start at, level 10. But you know what? Bear with me. I'm still learning a lot about sound and editing and all of the things. So I hope you go on this journey with me of learning how to do all these things. Like I said, I really love podcasts. I listen to all different type of podcasts, educational ones, narrative podcasts, entertainment, health, and wellness. And I really hope to cover all of the things on this podcast. I also feel like vulnerability is very powerful, and I love listening to people's stories and, what they've learned along the way and how they've got to where they are today. So I feel like me sharing my own story and things that I've learned is something that also can be healing for me and possibly also connect. I really hope to build a community and be able to connect with you all. Get out yourself is something my dad always says. It's like a little self-check to step out of your ego and to be open to a new perspective. And I feel like allowing that into my life has allowed me to be open to a lot of growth and to a lot of new things in my life. Get Out Yourself podcast is a podcast of self-exploration. I hope to encourage you to deep dive into yourself, to learn to give yourself grace. I want it to be a safe space where we can learn, where we can laugh, where we can cry, where we can grow. I really just want this to be a space where, we can build community and hopefully find healing in any way. I really want to use this space to share my opinions on hot topics, what I've learned at different phases in life. I want to talk about friendship, marriage, career, being a new mom, postpartum. I want to have guests in the future to hopefully talk about people's businesses, about women's health. I want to talk about routines, wellness practices. I really want to talk about everything. I want you to stop and go to Instagram right now and follow me at Get Out Yourself and DM me if there's any topics you want me to cover or if you want advice. Let's get into it. If I'm not listening to music or a podcast, I'm listening to an audiobook. I love a good audiobook, especially if the author reads their own book. It's just something about it that just really brings the experience to the next level. I don't know, but let me set the vibe for you, okay? So now that I'm a new mom, the time that you get to yourself, you have to really appreciate 10 times more than you did before you had kids. So let me set the vibe for you. So I go to the grocery store, have my little headphones in. I'm there. I'm getting my healthy food, whatever. I'm a meal prep. I'm going to get some treats, of course, because treat yourself. And I have it in my audiobook, okay? Right now, I'm listening to Nothing is Missing by Nicole Walters. And she said something that really spoke to my soul, even more now that I'm a new mom. And she said, women are taught to set themselves on fire to keep others warm. Honey, I was like, I don't know. There's so many different ways that I interpret this too. But the first thing that comes to my mind is when you're like 2 seconds postpartum, like society expects you to go right back to being yourself. And I feel like there are different phases of life where you just really grow out of the version that you were and you become a new version. And I feel like that happens as you age. And, if you get married, you become a new version of yourself. If you have a kid, you become a new version of yourself. And I just feel like that continues to happen with growth in life. And I feel like we are so strong but we don't always have to be. It's okay to not be okay. And I feel like the very second that you're pregnant, people start hitting you with the just wait until you're never sleeping again. You're never going to go outside again. You're never going to have fun. Just wait until the baby's teething. Oh, you're having a girl. Just wait until she's a teenager. It's like, can we just live or no? Can we just live? They're like, the fun is over. And I really don't believe that. I feel like the moment that you tell people you're pregnant, they shift the focus and they like to say that it's no longer about you. And I do believe that at every phase of life, your priorities change. But I believe that it has to be about you. And you have to be your number one priority to be able to do all the things that you do as a parent, as a wife, and all the different many hats that you wear. And there's another focus that's on all of your dreams, your wants, your desires, that they should be suppressed and they should be a thing of the past. But what I've learned and what I've always known, but I feel like even more now, is that if you don't pour into yourself, you can't pour into anyone else. Your cup is going to be empty. And I feel like because you're a mom or super parent or whatever the labels that society likes to give you, they expect you to survive off fumes, that the mom should always go without to be able to pour into everyone else. And I know that, especially being a new mom, that none of this stuff is easy, but it's important. And I feel like I have to remind myself this because I feel like as being a nurturer, it's so easy to really put yourself last. It's something that I thought that I would never do. Like, I would see women do it and I would be like, I'll never do that. But I think it's so natural and it's so easy to do because I feel like we have so many priorities, or I don't even know if I want to say expectations of us, that it's so easy for you to look up and you're burnt out and you've been working all day and you've been doing all the things that you need to do and you have nothing left to give. And I feel like the newborn phase has really opened my eyes to that because I feel like you can't plan everything. You just really have to go with the flow. Like, I even noticed that, I've been caring for the baby all day and I look up and it's 3 o'clock and I haven't even drank a sip of water. I haven't ate anything. And I feel like it's so easy to get stuck in that. Especially, I have a lot of support, thankfully. But if you don't have any, I can imagine that it's even 10 times harder. So, to backtrack a little bit, I was pregnant. I had a high risk pregnancy. And then after I delivered my baby, I ended up with postpartum preeclampsia. And I think that partially it's because I wasn't caring for myself in the way that I needed to. I was trying to do too much because I'm used to being so independent and not needing help. And my husband knows when to step in when I need help and, to tell me, like, okay, relax. And he was telling me to relax. And I'm like, no, just let me do one more thing. Well, that one more thing landed me into the hospital because I wasn't taking my medicine and all the things that you're supposed to take. And some of them I felt like, well, I'm not in pain, so I don't need this that's generally used for pain. But it caused my blood pressure to rise and I ended up in the hospital. And at that point, I couldn't be anything for anybody. And that's when it really opened my eyes and it broke my heart because I got readmitted and I had to be away from my husband and away from my newborn. But I knew that if I didn't take that time to make sure that I was okay, especially with the Black maternal health statistics and the reality of that, I knew that there was a possibility something could happen to me and I wouldn't be able to be there for my child and my husband. So that is really something that opened my eyes into being better at taking care of myself. And every day is a new day. And I just really try to put my best foot forward in that aspect every single day. The more fulfilled you are, the more that you'll be able to pour into others. And that's just what I try to focus on. Like, when I'm the best me, I am the best friend, the best cousin, the best mother, the best wife, the best everything. There are a few things that I have done postpartum that I have a deeper appreciation for now. And also, a couple of those things made me feel a little more human while going through the process because I feel like your mind feels cloudy, you're exhausted, you're hungry. I mean, I had a C section, so I had a lot of pain at my incision and all of the things. And one thing that I appreciate more now is, and something that I do is I invest into my shower routine. So what that looks like for me, and let me preface this by saying I know that we don't have time to do this every single day because you're literally caring for a newborn and everything you do is in 10 times speed now. You have to eat, shower, go to the bathroom, do all the things in 5 seconds. But the days where you do have a few extra minutes, this is the time where I would spend a little more time into doing these things so that you're present and able to enjoy them. So by investing into my shower routine, I've always loved like body creams and lotions. I have like a fair collection of them and body oils. And I made sure to have my favorite body lotion, body oil, body cream, all of the things, my favorite body wash, so that it made the showers that I had a deeper appreciation for even better because sometimes I really needed to step away and have a shower meeting. And the shower is where I do a lot of my thinking, it's where I decompress. And after I had a baby, the shower was the first place where I scheduled to cry. Yes, I'm somebody who schedules to cry. Maybe not so much anymore because I'm more emotional now, but it was so much going on that first shower, that first moment when you're able to take a shower, it was just so much to take in and it was so overwhelming that I cried and I felt so much better. And when I came from that shower, when you step out the shower room and that air hits you and you catch your breath, I was like, all right. It made me feel like, all right, girl, you got this. Get back in the ring. Let's move on to the next thing and keep doing what we need to do. Something else that was really important to me during my pregnancy and postpartum, even more. I've been going to therapy for about 6 years, but during the changes of pregnancy and postpartum, being able to go to therapy was such a game changer. My therapist is also a mom, so I feel like when I would tell her all my anxiety and concerns and all of my thoughts, she would really break it down. And I really felt safe and comfortable and validated in the way that I felt. And I'm also married to a therapist, so I am really thankful to have an understanding partner. He was also raised with a lot of women, so I feel like that gives him an extra layer of compassion. But having that safe space outside of your friends and your family, just to be able to just lay it all out, I feel like was a vital part in having a beautiful pregnancy and postpartum period for the most part. Now, I don't want to say that as if it wasn't challenging because it was and it still can be certain days, but I feel like it really helped me navigate all the changes that you go through because not only physically, mentally, there are so many things that you're going through and it really takes time to, oh my gosh, I hope that you guys cannot hear my dog barking. Being able to communicate with my partner openly and honestly, no matter how I was feeling or what I wanted to say, if I felt like, it would disappoint them or make them sad or uncomfortable, just having that open line of communication, that knowing that no matter what I said, that he would be understanding. And I know that won't always be the case or be the case for everyone, but I think regardless of anything, just being able to communicate with your partner will really make the transition through the different phases of motherhood a lot smoother because sometimes it's your partner that has to advocate for you, because there's sometimes so many things going on that I feel like you can't even process or you can't even think. So that is something that I really valued during my experience. And the most important to me is going outside. I would be in the house, all day, caring for the baby and doing all the things. And then when my husband was at home with me, he would remind me, like, okay, you need to step outside for a minute, whether that was standing on the balcony or if we would just go outside and just stand there for a second, because it started to become to the point where there were days where I didn't see the sun. I didn't feel the wind on my face. I didn't know if the sun was out, because sometimes I would even forget to open the blinds, that he had to remind me, like, all right, we need to go outside. And so feeling the sun or the fresh air on my face also was very grounding for me and allowed me to catch my breath, and something that I appreciated so much, because I felt like sometimes your emotions get the best of you, and that is completely normal. But going outside really gave me a second to be able to do some grounding. And so even if you don't live in perfect weather in Southern California like I do, maybe getting some fresh air could be something that could really help you and to be grounding, so you can go, move to the next thing that you have to do. There are so many mental health buzzwords on social media that are super popular that everyone talks about, but I don't know if everyone is actually putting the work in to put them into use or into action. And one of those things that I feel like everyone likes to say is, make sure you set boundaries, make sure you set boundaries. But what does that look like? For me, I did set some boundaries postpartum that I felt like really helped me ease through the newborn phase. And I just want to say that it's okay to set boundaries. It is okay to set boundaries. It's okay to say no, and just understand that you can't please everyone, but the people who love you will totally understand. No matter what your boundary is, if they love you, they will respect it and most likely be really understanding. Postpartum recovery is so overwhelming, but I also feel like it's such a sacred time where you bond with your child and with your partner, and just being able to glide through that as much as you can. And I say glide through it as if it's easy. There are a lot of bumps in the roads, but if there are things that you already have figured out, it will minimize the stress in certain aspects, just to avoid added stress on all the other things that you're going through. I also feel like there's a lot of discussion online on whether or not it's selfish to set boundaries for you and your family postpartum. And I'm here to tell you that it is not selfish at all. You have to do what's best for you and your family, and know no matter what decision that you make, you're not able to please everyone. I also feel like, this time is very emotional besides overwhelming. I did a lot of crying. Like, I was crying because if I felt like I did something wrong, or I would cry if I felt like I didn't make the right decision for myself. I would cry for a lot of reasons. And I feel like it's normal. And it's probably better to like not have people like in your space. And not that you can't share that moment with you, but it's already a very vulnerable time. And if you're like me, I don't like everybody seeing me cry. I'm working on it, okay? I don't like being vulnerable. It makes me feel uncomfortable. And that is the most vulnerable time in your life. So I would just say plan for the experience that you want to have. It doesn't matter what anyone else wants. You and your partner make those decisions together. But postpartum, I did have certain boundaries. And I feel like they were very simple and they were not over the top. And I set these boundaries months before she came, so everybody knew. And also, everybody knows me and they know how I am. So I think that no one was surprised. And so the boundaries that I set for me and my immediate family was that basically I only wanted my immediate family to come in. And that was like siblings and parents and cousins. And my close cousins live in LA, so they would have to travel to me. And I knew that they were going to give me a lot of time. And the cousins that I grew up with in the same house, they live in Arizona. So I knew that they weren't going to come. So the boundaries that I set was basically for like my husband's cousins, because they're basically like siblings. They count as siblings in my eyes because they grew up very close. That only they were allowed to visit, and like our parents. And all I ask is no kissing because we don't want to get the baby sick. The first few months of life is very vital, and they can get sick really easy. No cold sores, because something that I learned is that, the cold sores come from herpes virus, and that can be passed along to a baby, and it can be very detrimental to them. I am not a doctor. I'm not giving you medical advice. So make sure you do your own research to make your own informed decision. And one thing that you will learn about me is that I'm not going to tell you what to do. I just want to be open and allow you to make your own informed decision. And I'm always going to encourage you to do your own research. But yeah, and lastly, don't come if you're sick. If you're sniffling, you've been at the club, you woke up with a sore throat, just don't come because it's not worth the risk. And I didn't make any of these decisions to keep my baby away from anyone. She is so loved, and I am so thankful for how loved that she is. And I want to share her, with my family and my friends and everything. I just want to make sure that she's safe. And I had a lot of anxiety during my pregnancy and postpartum. And it's because for my first pregnancy, I had a miscarriage. And after I had a miscarriage, I was diagnosed with PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. And that is the number one cause for infertility. So throughout this whole time, after I had a miscarriage, then the doctor was like, okay, well, you have PCOS. After I had been struggling with the symptoms for 5 or 6 years. It took me 6 years to get diagnosed. And yeah, so I feel like my anxiety came from the fact that I never knew after I had a miscarriage if I would ever be able to have a child again. And I prayed, when I prayed that whatever was in God's will for me, I didn't pray for what I wanted, that I wanted a baby. I prayed that if God seen it in his will, that he would allow me to have a baby. So then I have this baby. And so now I'm like super anxious. I'm like, okay, like I don't want anything to happen. I don't want her to get sick, because also I don't know if I'll be able to have another child. And it's not being negative, it's being realistic of, PCOS. And I believe whatever is meant for me is meant for me. And if it's meant to happen, it will happen. And I do trust that. But being in therapy helped with also navigating my postpartum anxiety. And thankfully, my family is super supportive. They understand, and they come and visit us all the time, and they give us a lot of love. But it really helped in, my journey to recovery. And I feel like there are people who struggle with people pleasing. And what happens when you're a people pleaser, you don't want to set boundaries because you don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. And you just sit there and internalize your feelings and you try to talk yourself out of it. And that's not okay either. I feel like your feelings are valid and you should be able to, you know, be open about your feelings and people will understand. And I know that especially for me, times were different back in the day. My mom is 70 years old, so the way that, you know, they went about things back then and now are totally different. And people, they'll be understanding. And guess what? If they are not understanding, it is not your responsibility to make people comfortable. Your responsibility is to advocate for yourself and for your child, and that is also your partner's responsibility as well. Something that I want to remind you to do is to give yourself grace. That was something that a lot of people told me, but I didn't really understand, of course, until I was in this situation. Like I mentioned earlier, I cried for every single thing. And one of the reasons why I cried and I had to give myself grace was because I was high risk. I had a scheduled induction and it ended up being a failed induction, and I had a C section. Well, I didn't have a birth plan. I wasn't really worried about too much of the technical details. I mostly was just worried about me being safe and my baby being safe. It's funny because the nurses actually told me that I had the easiest birth plan that they ever seen. And basically, I just told them, like, I didn't want any students doing anything. I wanted the dad to have skin to skin. Of course, I wanted skin to skin. And that I didn't want the epidural in the beginning, but I wanted the epidural if I decided I wanted it. Like, I pretty much wasn't closed off to it, but I just really wanted to vibe and to see what birth was giving, to be honest. And it sounds crazy, and everybody who I would tell that told me, like, girl, you're crazy. But I really just wanted to have the full experience and see what it was giving. So, I went, I believe I ended up having, yeah, so I had my C-section on the third day. And so, they're giving you all the Pitocin and all the things. And I just wasn't dilating like I was supposed to. After the first 24 hours, I was still at 1 centimeter. And baby, I cried because I'm like, what is going on? The pain is paining, okay? It's whooping me and nothing has changed. The pain is changing, baby. The pain, I give it a 10. Okay. But I'm not dilating or doing what I need to do. So pretty much they gave me the max amount of Pitocin. And at that time, I was only 4 centimeters. And throughout the time, they kept putting me in different positions because they're like, her heart rate is dropping. And I'm like, well, if her heart rate is dropping, baby, you better get her out because I ain't got time to be playing. But they were just like, no, like, she's okay. Like, just let's just keep moving around. So I'm like, okay. And I was really trusting my own intuition. But then once I had the max amount of Pitocin, and then they told me that she was getting like a little hematoma on her head and that I was going to have a C-section, I cried because I just felt like, well, if her heart rate, she didn't like the Pitocin at first. So her heart rate was kind of like up and down unless I was in certain positions. And I just felt like, damn, like I really put my baby through unnecessary stress. And I was like, I've been for a mom for 5 seconds and I'm already failing. Like, that's really how it felt to me, even though that's not the truth. But I'm like, if I would have known that I would have had a C-section, I was never against having a C-section. Being high risk, I always knew that it was on the table, but I was just going to try to not have one if possible because, it's a major surgery. So then when I had to have one, of course, I was like so scared and in tears because I didn't want to put my baby through anything unnecessary, pretty much. But I had to give myself grace. In that moment, all I knew was what I know now. I couldn't make the decision to have a C-section without the information of the failed induction. And so I really had to give myself grace. My baby was perfectly fine. She was a big 8 pounds and I'm only 4'11". So it just wasn't, in the cards, and she was safe and I was safe, and that's all that I cared about. And it ended up working out, but there were so many situations like that through, pregnancy and being a new mom that I really had to have to remind myself, like, you have to give yourself grace. Like, you're not always going to be perfect. And I think it's because I'm a researcher. It's like I know all the facts, but sometimes life doesn't go by the books. And you just have to accept that and move on and know that you made the best decision that you can make at that time. And you'll learn from it and maybe make the same decision or a better decision in the future, period. And something else that is super important that I feel like, I keep saying is to check in with your mental health. do mental health check-ins. If you're not okay, that is okay, but just make sure that you reach out to get the help that you need. And I feel like when you go to the doctor, um, it's very like nonchalant, like get help if you need it. Make sure, and I feel like it's just pushed to the back burner, but it's really so important, and you can be the best you by having the space that you need or someone to hold space that you need to be able to navigate this, because honey, this is a lot. Okay, this is like so much. And I think about like friends that I've had that had babies before, and I always hear, people be like, "Oh, you lose friends when you have babies or whatever." And I didn't have that experience at all. I'm also thankful that a lot of my friends were pregnant with me during this time, so we kind of had the space to hold with each other and to reach out, to each other and to have conversations, or if we have a question about certain things. But I know that's not always the case, and I just think about friends that I've had before, and I'm like, dang, I thought that I did good, but maybe I didn't. And it's probably because I didn't know what to do for them, because I wasn't going through the experience, but also I wasn't at the level of consciousness to have the language to even ask if I was doing a good job. And lastly, the best advice that I got as a new mom, the best advice, hands down, is to let your partner help. And I am so serious. Let your partner help. I think the transition was easier for me because I did get readmitted into the hospital. And so I was in there, I think, for 2 days, a day. Child, time just be going all together. But during that time, when I was readmitted, I had a lot of anxiety about her coming back to the hospital, even though I was readmitted to the postpartum unit, because I didn't want her to come and get exposed to sickness. So for a full day, my husband and my mother-in-law, both so amazing, love them to pieces. They cared for my child when I couldn't, and I'm at the hospital trying to pump, and he would come and pick up the milk and do all the things. And I felt like, I that helped me to not intervene so much. So, something that I do, and I feel like it's really hard to do, is let them go through the gigs, okay? Let him or let them, whoever your partner is, let your partner go through whatever it is they need to go through to figure it out. Now, if they're overwhelmed and they need someone to step in, I could see why it would be important for you to step in, because sometimes maybe you need to take a breath and step away. But if they don't, if she's crying, if she's doing whatever she needs to do, I know that he's okay in that moment unless he reaches out for help, because I know that he will communicate that with me, that he will be okay. And he has to learn. I feel like there's a lot of focus on women's intuition. And when you have a baby and you become a mom, the mom, she's just going to know. She's just going to know. And it's like, I think that for me at least, I lean a lot on my own intuition, because my intuition is usually right. That's how I make my decisions. And while they may not have the same intuition on the level that we do, they need to learn. I feel like you do have that connection with your baby, by holding the baby and carrying the baby, but they need to learn. And the only way that they're going to learn is if you give them the space to learn, which also means giving them the space to make mistakes, because then they will be able to learn from those mistakes, but it will also allow them to build confidence in what they are doing. Because I feel like a lot of time the partner is just like, okay, well, you do it because you should know. And no, I think giving them the space to figure it out is going to build their confidence, and also yours, to 1,000,000,000% trust that they got this. They don't even need your help. Okay. A large part of your postpartum is experience is the support of your partner. And that's something that really made sense once I was going through it, because I needed my partner more than I even could fathom that I would need him. Like, I knew that he would be there for me, but I'm so independent and he allows me to be independent without having his masculinity crushed, that I didn't think I was going to need some help, honey. I needed so much help. And also, as a partner, by allowing them to help, it gives you a little bit of space, kind of. Like, so you don't feel like you have to do everything. And sometimes if you don't communicate that, like if you feel like, oh, well, I want your partner, like I want you as my partner to do more. If you're not communicating that, that's when the resentment starts, the miscommunication starts. Now y'all mad at each other and you don't have, you're not sleeping well. So little arguments become big arguments, and it just really adds to the stress and anxiety of postpartum. And it doesn't always have to be this way. And sometimes you have to go through the roller coaster to be able to figure those things out. But if I never told you anything, give your partner the space to figure it out. I don't even step in, honey. After a while, I let him go for, as long as I see fit. And if I feel like, he needs an opinion, because I am here with her right now all day now that he's at work, I will be like, oh, okay, maybe you should try this. But give him some time. Don't just rush and step in and be like, no, you're doing it wrong. Also, let's talk about the doing it wrong. I am somebody who likes things a certain way. And while I love to believe the way that I like to do things is the smartest and most amazing and perfect way, which it may be in my head, I also has by stepping back, I allowed him to figure out the way that he wants to do things, which may not always be my way. And that's okay. And I've had to learn to accept it, okay? That right there, y'all gonna be solid. You're gonna be communicating. And then by you having that safe space, and then they're feeling all confident, like, I got this parent stuff, I could do whatever it is that needs to be done. They'll in turn be able to advocate for you and communicate to others what you need if you are unable to. And I feel like that is important and hopefully will really make your experience even more amazing. While social media likes to focus on the physical aspects of self-care, doing your hair, doing your nails, doing face masks, which are all amazing and all things that I love to do, that is the easiest part of self-care. Self-care is taking care of yourself on the inside as well, mentally, spiritually, going to therapy if you feel like that's your journey, if you feel like you need it, being able to communicate, working on yourself if you are not the best communicator. That is the ugly side of self-care, I like to say, because it's not the easy part. It's challenging. It makes you uncomfortable. It puts you in a vulnerable position. But self-care isn't selfish. That's something I want to remind you. It is not selfish to put yourself first and to fill up your cup first. It's not always easy, and every single day you might not be able to do it. But as long as you put that foot forward first to attempt to pour into yourself, you're going to feel so full, and you're going to be able to be the individual that you want to be for yourself and for everyone else. So, as I leave you, I want to ask you one question. Have you done something for yourself today? Thank you so much for listening. This is Get Out Yourself podcast with Shay. I said it once and I'm going to say it again. Make sure you're following me on Instagram at Get Out Yourself. Please leave me a review, DM me. I love you. Love yourself.